Good afternoon. I'm Bob Probasco, professor at Texas A&M University School of Law, where I run the Tax Dispute Resolution Clinic. Welcome to our webinar on choosing a tax professional. First, a disclaimer. While some of the panelists are attorneys, we will be discussing the law generally, and nothing in the webinar should be considered as legal advice. Attendees should consult their own legal advisor to address their own unique circumstances. After the initial presentations, we will have a Q&A session. Please type in your question in the Zoom Q&A feature instead of chat at any time, and the panelists will address submitted questions as time allows. I'm going to start the presentation talking about in some general terms how you should go about choosing a tax professional. After that, Penny Clayton from United Way, who is the coordinator of all of the VITA sites in Tarrant County, will discuss the VITA program. That's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. I broke down what I'm going to cover into two parts. First, talking about what to ask a tax preparer and who are tax preparers, and then go over some warning signs. So we'll be giving you some input on how to seek out a tax return preparer, and also as you're talking with a prospective tax return preparer, what are some warning signs that you may notice that should lead you to be very careful about working with that particular preparer. And then when I conclude that, Penny Clayton will be taking over and talking about VITA. I wanted to talk initially about who prepares tax returns. There are a lot of different varieties. They have different pluses and minuses. And just to give you a little bit of background of that, I wanted to start with that. Lawyers, CPAs, and enrolled agents prepare tax returns often. Enrolled agent is a special category of people who have gone through special training and credentialing with the IRS to be given authority to represent taxpayers before the IRS. This category is generally a safe choice because all three of those types of tax return preparers are covered by government regulation. Lawyers are regulated by the state bar. CPAs are regulated by the State Board of Public Accountancy. Enrolled agents are regulated by the IRS. All three must maintain certain standards of conduct to maintain their license to practice. So we're usually very cautious about doing anything that might be considered unethical. And normally we have to go through some type of training and certification on a fairly regular basis. The Tax Dispute Resolution Clinic does not prepare tax returns for people. We work in a different area. We handle disputes that come up after the tax return is prepared, but I have a certain perspective on who you should consider to prepare a tax return for you, because in the course of our work, a lot of our clients come into us because they worked with a preparer who was not very good. And the preparer may have done things that got them into trouble. That's not true of all of our clients, but we've seen a lot of bad situations over the years. In addition to the lawyers and CPAs and enrolled agents, other people are able to prepare tax returns for a fee as well. There is nothing that restricts them from doing it. They are not regulated if they're not in one of those three categories. Most of the problems that I see come from this category, but many of the people in this category are highly competent and ethical. My wife's cousin prepares tax returns, is not a lawyer, not a CPA or an enrolled agent, but she has trained herself and she is very good at it. And I would trust her to prepare my tax return if I lived in the same state. Not all people deal with actual human beings to prepare their tax returns. A lot of people rely on software. There are many software companies that offer software products that you can use yourself to prepare your tax return without having to pay a higher fee. You may pay a lower fee for that tax return software, but you don't have to pay an additional fee to the person who is using it to create the return. The software category is very good for people who have a sophisticated understanding of tax. It will simplify things, but if you are not very familiar with tax, software can be tricky because the software may prompt you for information. And if you don't understand the underlying law, you may not understand the prompt that they're asking you for information, and you may get into create problems for yourself that way. But it can be done. Many people use tax software products today. There is also free filing software for low-income taxpayers that is available through an IRS partnership. Congress, many, many years ago, requested the IRS to develop its own tax return software that it could offer for free to people to use online. And the IRS instead chose to enter into a partnership with several companies that had their own software products. And these companies said, we will make available a free version of our software for people under a certain income threshold. There have been problems sometimes in the past with those that people have started out trying to get a free tax return prepared and found themselves diverted into a part of the program that charged a fee. And there are certain situations, certain categories that the free filing software may not handle properly. And final, I'm leaving, I think, the best for last. There are some free services for low-income taxpayers where you will go in and meet and talk with an individual, bring your information to them. They will go over it with you, and they will prepare the tax return for you, but not charge you a fee. This is an excellent program. It's offered for free to low-income taxpayers because that helps the tax system operate better. VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, is one of the prominent ones, and Penny Clayton is going to talk about that later. There's also tax counseling for the elderly. The IRS provides grants to these organizations to help them do the work that they do to prepare free tax returns for low-income taxpayers. So you have a lot of different choices. A lot of people, if they qualify, the last one, VITA or TCA, is an excellent choice because they get very, very good training. They're going to do it well. They don't have some of the conflicts of interest that other preparers may have. They're going to be doing it ethically and competently, and it's going to be free if you qualify. And Penny will tell you a lot more about that later. There are several things that you may want to ask or look for when you're considering tax return preparer. Generally, their experience or their history. Have they been doing it a long time? What kind of experience or training do they have? What are their qualifications? You may also want to look at the fee arrangements, obviously. And fee arrangements are more than just this is how much money you're going to pay to have your return prepared. They also have other types of situations that you may run across where they will prepare your return and e-file it but charge you a bigger fee in return for helping you get a loan of the refund amount in advance. Those are generally not a very good deal for taxpayers. The fee is rather high for getting the refund, perhaps a couple of weeks earlier, but you will run across that occasionally. You also want to look at whether someone is e-filing returns, sending them electronically to the IRS rather than printing out paper for you to sign and mail to the IRS. We have in particular seen in the past 3 years with COVID, serious problems with backlogs when there are a lot of paper returns that are filed. Someone at the IRS has to enter that information into the system rather than having it directly imported. So they may make a mistake as they're keying your information in, and it takes a lot longer. It can delay a refund substantially. You also should be looking to see if they are going to sign your return as a paid preparer. The tax return at the bottom has a place for you to sign, but it also has a place for the tax return preparer that you pay to sign. And anyone who prepares your return for compensation should be signing there, and they should also have a preparer tax identification number. That's a number that is assigned to them. They can request from the IRS, and that helps the IRS know exactly who prepared the return if there are any problems or questions later. You may want to ask, will they represent you or assist you if the return is audited? Some tax return preparers do this, particularly the category of lawyers, CPAs, and enrolled agents, because they have the ability, they are authorized by the IRS to represent someone. And in that case, they could deal with the IRS entirely on your behalf. You would never have to mail anything to the IRS or be in a meeting with the IRS or call the IRS. They would do all of that for you to help resolve the problem. Sometimes they will give you some assistance, but they won't deal directly with the IRS on your behalf. That may or may not be valuable to you, but it's something to consider when you're looking at someone that you might hire to prepare your return. There is a directory of credentialed or qualified tax return preparers at the address on the screen, and I think that's going to be put into the chat as well. That's maintained by the IRS, and that's people who have worked with them and gotten the IRS to agree that they can represent people. Those are people that definitely will be able to represent you if the return is audited, if you so choose. There may or may not be an additional charge for that. But now I wanted to talk about some warning signs, some things that should create concerns if you see that happening. And if you see it happening before if you see these signs before they have gotten you to agree to pay them, you may want to back out. And if you see it after you've already paid them, you may want to tread very carefully. These don't necessarily mean that this tax return preparer is being unethical, but it is a red flag that you need to be aware of and look out for. One common one that we've seen is tax return preparers that will just tell you, we can get a big refund for you, even before they've looked at your information. Because if they haven't looked at your information yet and they've already told you they can get a big refund for you, they are possibly going to be doing some fuzzy or unethical things to accomplish that big refund. A lot of tax return preparers say, we will get you to the maximum refund allowable, and that's not necessarily a bad sign. It's something that you need to be thinking about, though, and be very cautious of. A lot of tax return preparers try to get a really good deal for you by inflating your return and getting a bigger refund than you really should be entitled to, because they know that if you go out and tell your friends, I went to Joe down the street and he got me a huge refund, he's really, really great. Word of mouth is a lot of how they bring people in. So that's why it may be a red flag to consider. If they charge you a fee based on a percentage of the refund claimed, that is something that the regulated tax return preparers generally are not allowed to do. So you see that more often. But that, again, is a situation where they have an incentive to inflate your refund, and they may do that through unethical means. They may add deductions that you did not tell them that you spent money on this and can deduct it. They may claim things credits that you're not entitled to. We had one individual came unto us, and he had been audited, and the IRS asked about claiming the earned income tax credit, and he had claimed that for I think 6 nieces and nephews, which is not necessarily a problem. The nieces and nephews lived in Mexico. He sent money to them. That was not necessarily a problem, but they never lived with him. And when we found that out, we told him the tax return preparer should not have told you you were entitled to get that. But that helped them, and because you may have told the people what a great job they did for them. If they don't sign the bottom of the tax return as a paid preparer, that is a real danger sign. They're not willing to stand up and say they prepared this return, because any of the tax return preparers, if they do something fraudulent on your return, the IRS can impose fines and penalties on them. So anytime that they are trying to not let you send something to the IRS that has their name on it, that is a big, big red flag. We talked before about making up information that increases your tax return. I've had people come in and they tell me, I'm self-employed, I have a little business, and I'm looking at this return and there are all these deductions that were claimed on Schedule C on the tax return, and I don't know where those came from. I didn't tell the tax return that. The tax return preparer may have been making up information that increased your tax refund. Some tax return preparers on the return, if you're getting a refund, you can provide your bank account information to have the refund sent directly there. And that's a great convenience. It's convenient for you potentially because you get your money faster. It's convenient for the IRS. It's less expensive than actually writing a check out and sending it to you. So that's a convenience for the taxpayer. Some tax return preparers will include their bank account information, not yours, on the return, so that the refund is mailed to them. They send on that refund less their fee. That is maybe helpful to you if you don't have the money up front, but it is also something that can create problems. And we've seen a lot of those type of situations in the past. If they don't actually file the return before you leave, that is potentially an issue as well, because that's often when the tax return preparers that are unethical may be making up information and putting it on the return and not giving you a copy of it and not filing the return, e-filing the return while you're still there. They have a chance after you leave to change it. You should always get a copy of the tax return from the tax return preparer. This is what they had. Look at it before you leave and ask any questions and get it adjusted. And one final thing that I wanted to mention just briefly is that some tax return preparers, actually a lot of tax return preparers, are only available during filing season. And there may be no way to contact them until the next filing season. So they may be in operation from January through April, and then poof, they're gone. And you can't, if a problem comes up, you can't come in October, you can't reach them again until January. The good tax return preparers, even if they're not preparing returns during that slack period, it is still possible for you to reach them and contact them and tell them that you have a problem. So look for that. Ask about it. If I have a problem that comes up, are you going to represent me? Will you help me if it's audited? And if you will, or just if I need more information because I'm audited, you're not going to help me, but I can get information from you. How do I reach you during the off season? That may be something that you want to ask about. And if there isn't any way at all to contact them, that could be problematic. It's not necessarily, but it's something to consider because you are putting yourself in a situation where you may not be able to get any information from them for a significant period of time if a problem comes up with the return. But a lot of tax return preparers are not available except during the filing season. But hopefully there is at least a way to contact them. And again, these are very broad indications of things that you should consider and ask about, and warning signs that you might see. There are a lot of different permutations. A lot of it is just being cautious, being aware of the potential problems, and being careful. And why is it important? You are responsible for everything on your return, even when someone else prepares it. If the tax return preparer inflates the refund claimed on the return, you may get $5,000 and the IRS might come back and say, you were only entitled to $1,000. And in that case, you're going to have to not only pay back the extra $4,000, you may be subject to penalties and interest on top of that. So overall, you may get less than you should have been entitled to. Taxpayers are encouraged, if they deal with a tax return preparer that does something that's unethical or improper, they're encouraged to report that to the IRS. But in most instances, that will not get you off the hook for amounts that the IRS says that you owe. About the only time I've ever seen it be helpful directly to the taxpayer, other than really just getting rid of the bad apples in the bunch, is when what the tax return preparer did wrong was that they absconded or kept your entire refund and didn't give you what they agreed to. Again, that's kind of a summary, a high level, and if you have any questions in the Q&A, we will be able to get to those at the end of the session. But now I'm going to turn it over to Penny Clayton of United Way to talk about VITA program. Take it away, Penny. You're muted.
So thank you, Bob. And thank you for all that great information that you just shared. Could I have the first slide, please? Thank you. As Bob said, my name is Penny Clayton, and I am the VITA program manager for United Way of Tarrant County. I have been involved with the VITA program for about 13 years now, and 8 of those years have been spent with United Way of Tarrant County. Next slide, please. What is VITA? VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. It is a free tax preparation and filing for anyone or any household in Tarrant County with an annual income less than $60,000. We are partnered with the IRS, and we provide IRS certified volunteers and tax preparers who work at designated sites across Tarrant County. We currently, for the current tax season, will be offering 10 site locations here in Tarrant County that Tarrant County residents can attend to get their taxes prepared at no cost. Next slide, please. Why choose VITA? As you heard Bob say, there are a lot of things to look for, but for VITA, one of the things that is going to save you money. There is no need to pay a CPA for tax prep services. All our services within the VITA program are free. We also look to help you maximize your return. Usually the average refund to a VITA client here in Tarrant County is around $2,000. This program also gives you access to exclusive resources. Our clients can get referrals for financial coaching, budget guidance, and saving incentives. We are partnered with 2 agencies here in Fort Worth, Texas, the Women's Center and Pathfinders. Pathfinders also partners with us in offering a savings match program where if you come into a VITA site and you use part of your refund to put into a savings account up to $100, Pathfinders will match that amount. There are some incentives that the client will have to follow in order to receive that additional $100. But I promise you, it'll be worth your time to be able to participate in such a program. We also offer savings bonds within our VITA sites. So clients can purchase savings bonds for their children or for themselves, and that money can be taken directly from their tax refund that they'll be receiving. Next slide, please. So how do you use VITA? So our tax services are available, which are going to be beginning next week, January the 17th through April the 29th. You can go to United Way of Tarrant County VITA website for an updated list of all our locations. You can also contact 211 and give them your zip code, and they will be able to tell you the nearest VITA site that is closest to you. At most of our locations, there is no appointment necessary. Excuse me. Our sites operate, we have morning hours, and we also have afternoon and evening hours. Be sure to check out the VITA website for a list of all of what you need to bring to the site. So that would include bringing your photo ID, excuse me, any tax information and social security cards for the filer, and also any dependents that you may be claiming on your refund, on your return. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that this program is successful here in Tarrant County is because of all of the VITA volunteers. We have volunteers from all walks of life, students, professionals, medical professionals, CPAs, housewives, house husbands, you name it. We have all types of volunteers. This is one of the key successes to this program. And it's also a requirement that for us to be able to operate here in Tarrant County. Excuse me. So you can go to our website, and there you would find information about how to volunteer. We offer training. We offer the training materials. The training is free. It usually takes about 8 hours. We usually have training on Saturdays. And so it takes it's a full day. And at the end of that training, we go into the certification process where the volunteers become certified as a RAS, certified tax preparer, to be able to do returns in a VITA site. So for the last 13 years, Tarrant County residents have received $149 million in total tax refund funds and saved over $20 million in tax preparation fees. This program is so important to our Tarrant County residents that fall within the income guidelines to help them save that money, that they can put that money back into their households for bills, their children's education, repairs that could, come up unexpectedly. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was the end of my slides, and we are about to go into the Q&A session.
If there are no questions from the people who are watching the webinar, I can do some questions that may come up that people may think of as they go along. So as Ms. Clayton mentioned, there is an income requirement. It must be 60,000 or less. And so if you do exceed that, we can possibly get you some resources to where you can get your taxes prepared, but unfortunately, VITA would not be able to help you. Also, we do not do state returns. We only do federal returns. So if you are new to Texas and Tarrant County and you spent part of the year maybe in Michigan or another state that has state income tax, we would only be able to prepare your federal taxes, and then we could direct you to resources on how to prepare your state taxes. As far as, if you've never used VITA before, your initial appointment may take a while to enter all of your information, but if you've used VITA before, that information is stored. And once you fill out all the paperwork, giving us consent, we can pull that information and access it, so your appointments may not take very long. Also, a thing to keep in mind is that these sites will be operating at different times. So you may go to one site and they're saying, hey, we're about to close for the day, but there may be other sites that are open later. So always ask, if you happen to come upon a site that is about to close for the day, if there are any other sites open that day. As Ms. Clayton mentioned, there are about 10 sites within the Tarrant County. So at least, and they're supposed to be staggered so that there's one open throughout the morning as well as the afternoon and well into the evening. And that's pretty much the questions that I can think about. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Marquita.
I'll mention, in addition to VITA, we have the Tax Dispute Resolution Clinic at Texas A&M. It's one of 3 low-income taxpayer clinics in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we can assist you with problems that you may encounter after the return is filed. If the return was filed, but the IRS audits it and thinks you has questions and thinks you may owe additional money or may have to pay them back part of the refund, you can talk with a low-income taxpayer clinic who can represent you before the IRS. They can be the in-between between the IRS and you, and they know how to resolve these things most effectively and efficiently with the IRS. We understand what they're asking for and why they're asking for it better than people that do not deal with tax law all the time. So if an audit comes up, if you owe money and are not able to pay it, we can help with various different payment alternatives. And in addition to that, if you have a situation where you filed a joint return with someone and you think that you should not be held liable for that balance that's outstanding, under appropriate circumstances, the IRS will agree to only try to collect from your spouse and not from you, and we can provide assistance in that matter. If we can't resolve an audit with the auditors, we can go to tax court and represent you there. So there are a vast number of things that we can do to help you if you have a problem that arises after the tax return has been filed. Of course, if you're going to VITA, that may reduce the chances that you will need help after the tax return is filed, because they do a very good job of getting the information done correctly.
I would like to also mention, Bob, that we do have a partnership with you all for the LITC clinic. And so when VITA clients come into our tax sites with the letter from the IRS, sometimes it can be resolved through us, but we have Bob and his team available to our VITA clients that they can contact A&M Law School, make an appointment and help with that IRS resolving that issue. I'm looking over in the chat box, and a question came up. is, do we need to bring invoices, receipts, medical receipts when they come into VITA? You do not, but please remember that anything that you include on your tax return, you are responsible for that. So in the event that you could get audited, or sometimes the audit is not a bad thing, it's just the IRS just doing their job, you know, picking random clients just to do an audit. But if you have filed that on your tax return, you need to make sure that you do have record if they need to see those records that you claimed on your tax return. Marquita, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Oh, no, I was just going to answer the question and basically say, yes, anything that you put on your tax return that you're claiming as an expense, you need to make sure that you have documented, you have documentation for that expense, because if the IRS does come knocking, you will need to submit that documentation. Also, not to get out of the scope of it, but when you file a tax return, there is a statute of limitations that the IRS has to audit you. So don't think just because you filed your 2020 tax return and 2020 is over with, that no, they have up to 3 years to audit you. So you need to maintain your records anywhere from 3 to 5 years, so that if they do go back and audit a previous year, you can still provide that documentation. For past returns, there's another question is, do I need to bring in my past tax returns? When filing, when doing an e-file on your tax return, in order to e-file, if you do not have an identification PIN, what they usually use as an identifier for you to file your e-file is your previous year's, your prior year's AGI. So if you don't remember that number, it may be a best practice to bring in your previous tax return year, simply so that you will have access to your AGI, and your AGI is your adjusted gross income. So just to reiterate, so you don't have to, but if you're not going to remember that number, so that the preparer can file your e-file for your return, you may want to bring in a copy just so you have that available to you. Another question is, what if I don't have a copy of my W-2 from my employer? Well, we're still in the beginning of the year in January, and employers do have up to January 31st to issue out your W-2s. However, if for any reason you do not receive your W-2, you can create an IRS account, and you can request your tax account transcript. And usually what that will entail is it will have all the information of the employers who reported wages on you. So when you get a job and you sign up for your W-4 and all that stuff like that, they report that income to the IRS. So you can request that account transcript so that you can see what wages were reported for you based on your social. So it's always best practice to have the W-2, but if for any reason you're having trouble getting your W-2 from your employer, or you've moved and they've sent it to the incorrect address, you can request that information from the IRS tax account transcript. All right, another question that we have is, can VITA help me file an extension to file my tax return? I would have to double check to see if that's within the scope of VITA, but if it is within the scope of VITA, it's a simple form that has to be filled out to extend, but you have to be clear about filing an extension. An extension is an extension to file. It is not an extension to pay. So if you're going to owe taxes for that tax year, your payment is still due on April 15th or April 18th this year. So basically that extension is only going to be for you to file an extension to actually file the return.
Actually, Marquita, for VITA, the client would have, the taxpayer would have to seek that extension themselves from the IRS.
Yes. Okay. So then, as Ms. Clayton stated, then no, they would not be able to file an extension, but you can go onto the IRS website and you can just search for extension, and it will pull up a form number, and it's pretty self-explanatory once you read it, and then you can file it that way. I do know that most tax software will allow you to file an extension through their tax software, so that may be a resource you can use as well. The next question we have is, can I claim tax benefits from past years when I didn't claim benefits I could have qualified for? That's going to depend on if you're filing previous years and what the tax benefits and credits are. It's really it depends question, depending on the scope of your tax return and what all needs to be done. Some benefits, if you don't claim them that year, sorry, they're not You don't get to claim them the next year. I know one example of this is back in 2020, the IRS Congress issued something that basically said that you didn't have to pay taxes on the first $10,200 of unemployment benefits. That was a benefit that was strictly for 2020. So you can't go back and claim that benefit this year if you got unemployment because you didn't claim it in 2020. So it really will just depend on your tax situation.
One of the things that I wanted to touch base on, Bob had mentioned about being able to contact your tax preparer, during the off seasons. VITA does have we have 2 tax locations that after we shut down in April that will stay open until the last filing date of October. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that date is October the 15th. That is the last day for you to file, when you get an extension. One of those sites are our site located in West Fort Worth is Opening Doors for Women in Need. And then we also have a site in Arlington at the Shadowbrook location that they extend, till October. So if you come into VITA and you do have a problem or you need to get access to your tax return, to get a copy of anything, that we are available through October to assist you with that. So there's not any more questions in the chat box right now, but I would like to encourage our listening audience, if you're interested in becoming a volunteer for our VITA program, please go to our website. Like I said, all the information is there. Our training is currently going on for the month of January. We have training also coming up in the month of February. We provide all the training materials. We have great instructors that will be there to assist you and answer any questions to help you through the certification process. You can reach out. I see our website address is over here in the chat. Please visit our website. There you would find information about our tax site locations and about volunteering. Oh, and I would like to also mention for the college students, if you need a letter that you have participated with VITA, you can contact us. We'll definitely make record of how many hours you did and the service that you offer here in Tarrant County. And then also when you go to our website for college students, we do offer a VITA scholarship that is going to be something new for our program this year. So if anyone is out there listening and you are a college student and you are interested in volunteering with VITA, please go to our website and check out our scholarship information.
There was a question before about what to do if the employer did not send you your W-2, and that the first solution is exactly what United Way said, that you can get access to what records the IRS has, because the employer is supposed to send a W-2 not only to you but also to the IRS. There may be instances where the employer didn't send a W-2 to you or to the IRS. That happens. It doesn't happen often, thankfully, but it happens. In a situation like that, even if you didn't get a W-2 or similar form, you still have to report the income. You can report it as accurately as you can, maybe from pay stubs that you kept. but the fact that the IRS doesn't have that record doesn't mean you don't have to report it. You have to report things that you got, even if the IRS has not been informed about them.
Bob, I have a question. So if an employer does now, submit that information, is there a penalty for the employer for not submitting the W-2s information?
There is a penalty on anyone who is supposed to send information returns to the people who received money and to the IRS. They can be fined substantial amounts for not doing that. But occasionally it has happened. And sometimes there will also be the reverse problem. They will send the W-2 to you, but not to the IRS. And in situations like that, we have run into situations, for example, that someone received the W-2 from the employer, but the employer for some reason didn't file that with the IRS. And the IRS may be suspicious of that, of you reporting income that they don't know about, solely because earned income can qualify you for the earned income credit. So we've run into situations where we have had people, the IRS comes in and says, prove that you got this money. And we've helped clients do that type of thing. So if you got it, you have to report it, whether it was reported to the IRS and you or not.
So this is not pertaining to VITA, but this is just a resource for those people who may not qualify for the VITA clinic or who may have been trying to get in contact with the IRS with no help. So the IRS has what they call taxpayer assistance centers, TAC. There's one located in Fort Worth, there's one located in Farmers Branch, and there's one located in the Federal Building in downtown Dallas. And what you can do is if you have any documentation or any letters that come from the IRS and you do not understand what they're saying, and you've tried calling and you're unable to get through, you can make an appointment at these centers, take that paperwork in and sit down with a person who actually works for the IRS and have them review that documentation with you so that you know exactly what it is that you're doing or what exactly the IRS is asking for you. As I previously worked for the IRS, and one of the biggest things that I always tell people is that if you have questions, that's fine. But what you do not want to do is ever ignore the IRS. If they send you documentation, if they send you any type of paperwork and you don't understand it, the first thing you need to do is try to pick up the phone and call. And if you can't, find out where your nearest taxpayer assistance center is located. For smaller towns, you're probably going to have to drive over to the next bigger town, but usually they're in major cities, and make an appointment and go and sit and talk with someone so that you can understand what exactly the IRS is asking for you. Because a lot of times it's something small that can be handled quickly, but these things can snowball, as I'm pretty sure Bob knows, these things can snowball pretty quickly, and you can end up owing a substantial amount of money over something that could have been taken care of pretty quickly. So if you do have questions regarding the IRS or you got documentation from them, please make sure to look into, you can go on their website, irs.gov, and look up taxpayer assistance centers and go in and speak with someone about it if you're unable to visit a clinic like Bob runs or having other type of resource that you can use.
And I'd like to mention also another source of help for people that have problems. In this case, usually problems after the return has been filed, the same type of things that my clinic helps taxpayers with. And that's a local taxpayer advocate. The IRS has a group within it. It's called the Taxpayer Advocate Service. It was set up back in 1998 to provide someone in the IRS that would be speaking always for the taxpayer. I know a lot of people in the IRS who are very helpful and want to do the right thing, but they wanted to make sure that there was an organization within the IRS that people could contact to get problems resolved when they tried to resolve it through the IRS, but were having difficulties, or just it was urgent, they needed something resolved faster than the IRS could get to it. They're a very, very useful resource. That might be useful to many of you. There are 4 sites in Texas. One of them is in downtown Dallas. And you can find the information on the IRS website about the local taxpayer advocate They have case advocates that do similar work to what we do in a law income taxpayer clinic. But sometimes they have resources beyond what we have to the inner workings of the IRS. Very, very valuable group to know.
So it was mentioned how to tell if you have a legitimate, get something legitimate from the IRS. So first things first, if the IRS is going to contact you about an issue, about an audit, about anything, their first contact is going to be through the mail. They're not going to call you. They're not going to email you. It's going to be through the mail. And then in that letter that you get is going to have the official IRS letterhead, but it's also going to have a name, that person's title, as well as their phone number and extension. And it will not be one of those generic 1-800 numbers where you got to call. No, it will have that number that they give you will go directly to the person who sent you that letter or go directly to that person's immediate supervisor. So if you get anything from the IRS by email or by phone, and this is the first contact they have ever made with you, do not trust it. Their first contact with you is going to be that letter giving you a name, a title, and a phone number. Oh, it will also have their employee number as well. So you can call the IRS up and say, I just want to verify that this employee number is accurate and belongs to this person. And they will be able to do that.
Well, I think we've come to the end of the time. Thank you for everyone who attended. If you have any questions later and want to reach out to us, you can contact us through the Facebook channels or from some of the information that we had on the slide. And our best wishes for you to have all of your tax returns prepared promptly and accurately and never have to deal with the IRS after filing the return. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.